Chapter 1. A Deal with the Devil. Octogram will be our official title in the future. Guy's subordinates, namely his maids, the green-haired Misary and blue-haired Rain, are preparing delicate meals for everyone. Their dark-made outfits are of very good taste, and the same can be said about the dishes produced under their phenomenal culinary skills. Just as Ramirez had said, the Walpurgis banquet was meant for the demon lords to communicate and also to exchange intelligence. Perhaps it is for such a reason that they've prepared an additional venue for the sole purpose of leisure. However, there doesn't seem to be a rule stating that everyone has to be there for refreshment activities. Some left as soon as the meeting ended, while others stayed behind to enjoy the delicious food prepared by the staff. The remainder split into small groups to discuss topics of their own. The demon lords are all attending to their own interests. I personally find this opportunity to be rare and decided to taste the food. To be honest, I'm quite interested in Guy's diet considering his ruler's status among the demon lords. As it turns out, the food is delicious beyond belief. I enjoyed the world-renowned cuisines to my heart's content. Report. Component analysis complete. It is now possible to recreate the recipes: black tiger stew, grilled sage rooster, golden peach sherbet, and roast earth dweller dragon steak. And at the same time, I am also secretly learning the recipes. What? Me? Despicable? Cunning? What do you mean by that? I don't get it. It's too harsh to call my actions corporate espionage. It is, after all, an important part of intelligence gathering. The ingredients are all from monsters above rank A, so it would be difficult to collect them all. But I have already recorded the recipes, so we can take care of that one way or another. Lastly, they served a mixed fruit platter. There are a total of 6 demon lords who remain to attend the feast itself: Guy, Malim, Ramirez, Dino, Dagrul and myself. Valentine and Leon left long ago. While Malim was devouring the assorted dishes, I went to complain to her about deceiving me. She tried to play dumb, but I wasn't having any of it. As for Carrion and Frey, we decided to discuss our future plans on another occasion. Once the post-war settlements have been resolved, I am also willing to advise them on the reconstruction of their cities and any other issues that may come up. Their respective kingdom structure has been renewed with Malim as their new leader. Hopefully, this works out well for us too. Ramirez is still being stubborn about wanting to live in my kingdom despite my firm denial. But I can tell from her eyes that she is willing to fight my decision to the bitter end. She also seems to think Trainee-san will come to her aid, since she seems to really adore Ramirez. Trainee-san has been spoiling Ramirez with everything she has, so I probably can't expect much from her. I will have to keep note of this in the future. Dagrul and Valdora are having a good chat, and so are Guy and Dino, who are having a cheerful discussion about their daily lives. Before the feast, I offered them a special product from the Tempest Federation, brandy distilled from grape wine. It's one of my tactics to improve our image, which is to spread the words of our unique product and have an upper hand in diplomacy. This strategy appears to be very effective, even against demon lords. Delicious. Oh, this is great. Cough cough, this stuff is way too strong. Dino coughs painfully on the side while Guy and Dagrul sang their praises. On another note, Valdora-kun, could you please refrain from drinking all of our products in one go? Even though I still have a bunch of them stored in my stomach, those aren't for you. As for Malim, let's just say I won't be letting her drink anytime soon. The situation would undoubtedly spiral out of control if I let her drink. And considering the fact that she tricked me before, I'm not particularly keen on allowing Malim to drink. Then I shall take the drink. Within the blink of an eye, Ramirez plastered herself onto the wine glass, being so small, and became dead drunk in an instant. Beretta and Trainee-san came forth wearing panicked expressions, so I decided to leave Ramirez in their care. She's been pestering me to return to Tempest with her, so it may even be good for me if she falls asleep. With that being said, the feast concludes, and we decide to leave before Ramirez wakes up. I was worried about the type of situation I might run into, but as it turns out, I was able to make it through the Walpurgis banquet safe and sound. What a busy day. The Walpurgis banquet started at midnight and ended at noon of the next day. I left the meeting and returned to Tempest. I was able to ignore traveling and instantly teleport with dimension domination. Upon returning, I was reassured that the country was still intact and that everyone was obeying my orders to increase security. Everyone was making an effort to tighten the security on the streets. There isn't a single flaw. The guard force built using the blueprint of a police force has been pretty successful. A thought suddenly crosses my mind: Could our country's military be already strong enough that any normal country is incapable of standing a chance against us? After all, even our reserved personnel for defense alone have all reached rank B. Normal beasts and demons wouldn't even dare to approach us. Our nation's security is relatively good. But I am worried about whether the monsters who we've now staved off will go on to cause harm in other regions. Perhaps I should run an investigation regarding the issue, I think, as I travel alongside Veldora and Ch.1, entering the city of Ponranga's back. As soon as I enter the town, the residents and the patrolling soldiers begin to kneel down on the side of the streets, gradually opening up a path. Their movements are all well coordinated, most likely from training that I was not aware of. What are they doing? As I observe skeptically, Diablo saunters towards us from the end of the road. His expression is overflowing with joy as he flashes a bright smile. Diablo then exchanges looks with Rigard. "Welcome back, Rimuru-sama. Congratulations on becoming a member of the Octagram. We are most thankful for your safe return." Rigard, acting as the representative, greets me respectfully, followed by Diablo's congratulatory words. "Wait a minute, what is going on here? How do you know about me officially becoming a Demon Lord? And about that title, it should only have been revealed at that meeting with its debut. Because it was me who came up with the..." I wondered while my head filled with doubts. Shouldn't Diablo be taking down the kingdom of Pharmus right now? How would he have the time to plan out such a specific activity? I feel quite embarrassed, so I decide to ask him directly. "Very simple, Rimuru-sama. I asked a favor of Veldora-sama." Diablo replies cheerfully. I glance towards Veldora only to realize he was desperately averting my gaze. "Oi, excuse me. Mister?" From his reaction alone, I could tell he did something against his conscience. I got Veldora to confess after some interrogation. He seems to have made a deal with Diablo. Diablo, in return, offered meals and 3 servings of dessert. If he did, Veldora promised to tell him what happened during the banquet in detail. So that's how it was. That's how he got wind of how I've been approved to become a Demon Lord in the meeting and also passed on the new title of Octagram. Should I praise Diablo for his skillfulness in intelligence gathering? Normally, one wouldn't even dare to come up with the idea, let alone put it into practice. One must then have sufficient mobility and capacity to bribe someone as strong as Veldora. Although Veldora, who agreed to the deal, is pretty dumb, Diablo's resolve in carrying it out shows he is no ordinary man. And since the two are willing to give the bait and take the bait respectively, I'll cut myself short on the subject. With that being said, "Veldora, do you even need to eat?" What nonsense is that, Rimuru? Eating or not is not the point is that I want to eat things. And if that's really the case, you don't need to eat either. Ouch! I got retorted. But he does have a point. I can't exactly criticize without being called hypocritical in the matter. Lately, Shuna's culinary skill has grown a lot, and she has also produced a large variety of desserts. Now she can even recreate pastry puffs that have just been introduced at the cafe in the kingdom of Ingratia. Not even pudding poses a challenge to her. Moreover, with the addition of a variety of alcoholic beverages, we can now develop even more new desserts. The cafe manager Mr. Yoshida would also aid us in the process of developing new dishes. To gain his assistance, I prepared a variety of wines to send regularly, as that was his demand. Mr. Yoshida also said, "Now I can recreate previously impossible cuisines." With a delightful expression. With all these efforts, we were able to develop several new dishes and incorporate them into daily meals. Veldora is probably also shocked having tasted the food after his resurrection at the festival. "Veldora, you were tempted by the food, weren't you?" With that being said, Malim was also tempted by honey. An idea suddenly crosses my mind. We may be able to take over the world with culinary supremacy. My musings were suddenly interrupted by the sounds of Ch.1 and Diablo quarreling. "Have you fulfilled your duty as Rimuru-sama's bodyguard?" "Most certainly. It has been proven that as long as I'm around, you are simply unnecessary. I should be the one to question you about the progress of the mission assigned to you by Rimuru-sama." Kufufufufufu, it has proceeded without a flaw. In fact, I was just about to report back to Rimuru-sama myself. The two flashed each other bright smiles that did not quite seem to reach the eyes. They simply wouldn't let up on each other and continue to bicker. "You two, behave yourselves." "That's right. Rimuru-sama is tired as well. Haruna and the rest have been preparing food. Let's relax for now and come back to this conversation later." Rigord agrees to my view and scolds the two on my behalf. As expected of Rigord. Lately, he's been acting more and more prestigious. Now he seems very dependable. We were moved to another spot at Rigord's urging. The town folk all have joyful expressions. I was hoping to start a feast as soon as possible to have some fun with everyone, but Benimaru and the rest have yet to return from their expedition. That's why we've decided to delay our celebration feast. Right now, we'll wind things down and have just a bit of fun for resolving our trouble. We went to take a bath in the hot spring and enjoyed the food Haruna prepared. We listened to Diablo's report after everyone settled down and got in the proper frame of mind. With our victory against Clayman, our only issues left to tackle were building a new kingdom on Yom side and what to do with the Western Holy Church. Apart from that, there's also the issue of our future relations with Beast Kingdom Eurazania, Winged Nation Fulbrosia and the dragon worshippers who worships Malim. We could resolve these diplomatic issues peacefully, so there isn't too much to worry about there. I asked Diablo in a rather casual mood while sipping my postprandial black tea. So, what is it that you are doing now? Eliminating the kingdom of Pharmus and crowning Yom as the new king, you dropped the mission and returned, do you need any reinforcement? I casually turned back to my slime form, which I've been looking forward to doing. Relaxed, I am hugged by Ch.1 on her lap. I probed Diablo with a question as I felt two soft mounts pressed against the back of my head. If Diablo is in need of backup, I plan to send Sue's party to aid him. Right now, they are very much available for order, so there is no need to force Diablo to fend for himself. However, Ch.1 suddenly interjects and says rather disdainfully, a cheap shot nobody like him only deserves to make tea for Rimuru-sama. I should have been the one to attend to such matter. But I ignore her since that type of job is clearly not suitable for Ch.1. I spoke with the intention of aiding Diablo, but as it turns out, I was worried over nothing. No, Rimuru-sama. There is no such need. Everything has been going well according to plan. Diablo refills my second cup of black tea and begins his report. Drinking tea in slime form is a pain, so I decide to just appreciate the fragrance of it while listening to his report. But the previously relaxed atmosphere quickly vanished the moment Diablo began to speak. First of all, I had to restore the captives into their original states. After all, it is quite the inconvenience to keep them as meatloaf. Meatloaf? Eh? Does he mean what I think it is? Ch.1's body suddenly shivers as she seems to have sensed the source of my disbelief. That's right. It was indeed the case. Things really won't work out if my people keep acting like this. I visited the interrogation room once. I was just planning to have a peek. But now I regret it greatly. It would probably have been best if I had avoided visiting at all. I left the captives to Ch.1's care after seeing them and reminded her to don't overdo things. My logic then was, there was nothing to worry about as long as Ch.1 doesn't kill them. Now it is too late for me to regret my actions. While I feel unease inside, but expressing my regret now would not solve anything. Displaying no traces of my inner turmoil, I asked for Diablo to continue his report. Hard scene break. Regarding Diablo's first step, it was just as what he has described to Rimuru, to restore Archbishop Rahim and head of court Mage Razan to their original form. There were in total 2 carriages traveling alongside several cavalries as they set out for the kingdom of Pharmus. One of the carriages carried Diablo and the 3 captives. Well, since Diablo is the only person visible in the 6-seated carriage, it would be rather inaccurate to call the other occupants as passengers. That is because the other 3 people have been squeezed into the luggage on the floor of the carriage. Indeed, they were squeezed in the form of living meatloaf. Ch.1 has turned them into inhuman abominations. She skinned them one thin layer of skin at a time, but not so much as to kill them. Their peeled away layers of flesh exposed the muscle underneath. She then decided to slice off their meat piece by piece. Ch.1 has been practicing fish skinning with living people, and she even ensured that the ones getting skinned won't feel any physical pain during the process. Using her unique skill cook, she was able to push the captives to the point of psychological breakdown. Once they reached their physical limits, she would treat them with healing potion and reverse the process to start over. To witness their own bodies having been dismembered by another while feeling no pain at all, having suffered such repeated torments, the sanity of the 3 have been completely obliterated. Their expressions are devoid of life as they lay submerged in the pool of their own exposed intestines. There is no way they could return to their country in this state. Bearing such thoughts, Diablo, although unwillingly, decided to work on reversing their curse. How troublesome! Their senses have been completely twisted, so healing magic won't work directly. Despite his complaints, Diablo was amazed with how useful non-magical skills could be. He has mastered the art of magic and learned all about the laws of this world, yet even so, there still exist so many fascinating things out there, that he has yet to know. This does cheer Diablo up substantially. With his mood lifted, he expelled the remaining magic housed within the 3 left behind by Ch.1. First one is Reincarnated, then Rosin. This was not done in any specific order. Diablo dispelled the magic with ease. But he stopped at Ed Molly's, the king of Pharmas. Blessings, thank you. Reincarnated rejoiced as he expresses his gratitude towards Diablo. I am not important here, please, the king, restore the king. Rosin pleaded with Diablo out of loyalty for his king. Diablo slanted his eyes coldly at Rosin. Kufafufafu, are you begging me? Then you should understand that such a request does not come cheap. Diablo grins disdainfully. A delightfully devilish smile emerges on Diablo's face. However, there is not the slightest passion in his eyes. Ah. No, Rosin went pale with fear surged from his heart. He is regretting. Rosin recalls now. This Diablo, who has been sitting casually in front of him, is a terrifying demon. An archdemon, no, he said he isn't kind, cheap, like that. On top of that, even an archdemon alone would be quite a threat. If he was to appear in some smaller country, he would have caused a crisis that could bring the whole nation to its demise. That's why they are categorized as calamity, threat level up to special rank A. Basic magic barriers would not stand effective. He could easily destroy a nation's defense by unleashing a bit more of his aura, demonic aura. He may even be capable of crushing his enemies one-sidedly using magic alone. Adventurers below rank A wouldn't stand a chance against him. His presence alone would be the declaration of a death penalty. That is how terrifying the existence of an archdemon. It is a type of demon that even Rosin wouldn't want to antagonize or deal with alone. However, Diablo's presence is rather different. He seems all too human in appearance without a trace of his demonic aura. Except his eyes are arresting. They are akin to a golden moon hanging in the darkness of midnight with a dash of ominous red in the middle. The most appropriate term to describe them would be unforgettable to whoever looks upon them. Their appearances are especially unsettling. Apart from his eyes, the rest of his body all looks very similar to that of humans. In other words, even though most nations would install defense mechanisms to block out monsters up to certain level, magicule storage, he could easily infiltrate these cities without batting an eye. The only difference, and perhaps the only advantage humans have over monsters, is their intelligence. Some monsters are intelligent, but these monsters would often want to show off their strength one way or another. For instance, generously having their aura on display to demonstrate how large their magicule storage is. That is why magic barriers which react to high magicule presence would work against them. But what would happen if these types of monster decide to conceal their aura? A calamity-ranked monster suddenly shows up and strolls around on the streets of human cities. Rosin shuddered at the thought. In other words, things would go like this. A nation couldn't help it if its barrier is being destroyed via brute force, but as the enemies tear down the barrier, the nation could reorganize its defensive force. It can then send out this defensive force to face the enemies. However, if the enemies can completely ignore the barrier, the result is probably anyone's guess. These types of monsters would already be at a higher level than archdemons. Diablo is one of them. Moreover, his real identity is one of the primordial demons. Although in comparison, there is something even more terrifying that he hasn't considered. This demon called Diablo is already serving a master. That person is the master of all these monsters, the fearsome yet beautiful man with golden eyes and silver blue hair. Its hair gives off a feeling of transparency and it glitters like shining glass. His presence might have been momentary, yet his power was beyond one's imagination. Demon Lord. It is a being truly worthy of the title. The scene of him massacring the army of 20,000 men still sends shivers down Rosin's spine. But Rosin was occupied by another sensation after meeting him in person. When he was taken captive by others to that place. The way he looked at Rosin was as if he was a stone by the road. When those golden eyes met his, so mesmerized was he, to the point of not only forgetting the excruciating pain of his torture, but for him to abandon all fear of death. There are beings in this world that you simply should not antagonize. Don't overdo things. These were the words Rosin heard uttered by an angelic voice. It must have been a warning to Rosin. telling him to not get ahead of himself. There is no wonder that his country had been destroyed when they are up against such an opponent, who even a primordial demon would pledge loyalty to. If it's that demon lord, he could single-handedly destroy the entire kingdom of Pharmus. Such thoughts keep crossing Razan's mind. He ignores the bumping of the carriage and stands up from his seat to supplicate, kneel, before Diablo. "Of course, I understand. Please allow me, no, please grant me the privilege to be your servant. My humble life would be pledged towards you. Please be magnanimous and spare the life of King Admales." Razan offers his heart and loyalty to Diablo in hope of saving the king. Hearing Razan's wish, Diablo nods rather casually. "Very well then, although you are still insignificant to us, you are still considered quite powerful in the human world. If that's the case, you will be of use someday. Moreover, I wasn't planning to kill him without Rimuru-sama's order anyway. Then I should spare his life, however." Before restoring Admales' form, he will have Razan do something for him. He will display the disgusting form of the king to all the bigwigs of this nation who foolishly rose against his beloved Rimuru. Razan gulps nervously while waiting for Diablo to speak. As for Rahim, he has already been petrified due to fear. "I shall be generous this one time. Your performances in the future shall not only determine the fate of the king, but whether or not the whole of Pharmus will become a lifeless wasteland." He means exactly what he just implied. As long as they follow Diablo's, or rather Rimuru's, will, then everything should be fine. If not, whether it is Razan, Rahim, or even King Admales who's currently stuck in his abominable state, they all understand loud and clear what Diablo meant by that. The three had been foolish but were not stupid. At this point, even if they don't want to admit, they all know Diablo would put such an idea into action without hesitation. Their only chances of survival are to cooperate obediently with Diablo. That is without saying. "I shall attend to whatever duty you demand." Rahim begins to grovel and kneel down. He seems to be even willing to lick Diablo's shoes. "I am willing to pledge my loyalty to your grace." Razan also made up his mind. Whether or not the king is spared is now meaningless. However, his pride at having been the guardian of the kingdom of Pharmus all these years made him desire the continued survival of the king's bloodline. Even King Admales, who was overwhelmed by anguish and despair, understood this. Razan has given up on not just King Admales, but on the kingdom of Pharmus itself. But it is the right choice, King Admales thinks to himself. A country that defies a demon lord will be destroyed. There are only two options left for King Admales: comply or resist and be eliminated. The king isn't foolish enough to make the wrong choice at this point. As the ruler of a nation, he has to carry out his last duty of selecting the correct choice. "I declare, in the name of the last king of Pharmus, to be submissive of whatever demands are requested by Diablo Dono." He gives up struggling and proclaims so. Diablo has obtained the three's verbal assurances. In that instant, he has secretly activated his unique skill Tempter. As a result, the three become Diablo's slaves. "Rest assured. I won't do anything bad as long as you obey me." The demon Diablo says so gently with a smile on his face. Hard scene break. An unprecedented commotion dawned in the kingdom of Pharmus on this day. Their ruler King Admales has returned, only in a miserable state. The location is the hall, throne room, of the king's castle. The top ministers of the nation all are witnessing the scene with looks of horror on their faces. A box was carefully placed on the throne. There were meatloaves in it, with their king's face buried in the center. Whatever inside it is still alive. The eyes of the head may seem empty, but they are still conscious. "Shogo, what in the world happened? How did our king end up this way? Right, what happened to the other two? Where is our nation's army? What has Knight Commander Fulgen been up to? How could this happen with Razan-sama's company?" The ministers shrieked, barely able to contain the fear and panic in their voices. You can't exactly blame them for being this way. Razan, who is now playing the role of Shogo Taguchi, thinks to himself. During the days after the regular magic communication was cut, the people remaining in the kingdom have been on their feet the whole time. Although they believe their army of 20,000 men wouldn't be defeated due to its overwhelming numbers, everything may have an exception. Right now, there is more than enough ground to plant the seed of doubt when they couldn't even confirm the life or death of the king. Then Razan returned to the nation alongside Archbishop Rahim. They showed up in the teleportation room within the castle through the elemental-based magic waypoint transportation. The patrolling soldiers were alerted to the situation as they discovered the two lying unconscious at the location, which led to the event that took place this morning. The two soldiers hurried to confirm their identities. One of whom is the otherworlder Shogo Taguchi. The other one is the king's close acquaintance, Archbishop Rahiem. The soldiers, while shocked, went on to take Rahiem into care, as he has collapsed due to fatigue. They then discover that the young man has been hugging onto a box as if it's a priceless treasure. Without much mental preparation, one of the soldiers peeked in to examine the content of the box. This soldier belongs to the high-ranking imperial guards that serve within the palace, and normally he would never make such a horrified scream. But he did just that, and the reason being the content within the box. There was slimy gravy leaking out the box accompanied by a disgusting odor. The box contained distorted meatloaf made up of chopped-up intestines. This is the abominable sight of what was previously the ruler of this kingdom. Seeing this, the guard began to scream out of fear, which is considered great disrespect, but no one is condemning him. The people who joined after hearing his scream were also scared to death seeing the same sight. The servants, the ministers were all in panic upon seeing what their master had become. Some were screaming, crying, and shouting. Some began to vomit. And some even fainted out of fear. No one wanted to believe this is the king. But this was the reality. At first, some tried to confirm whether it is the real king or not. And, as it turned out, it was indeed the real king. "What are you all doing? Go and save the king!" Some minister calls out in panic, finally spurring the crowd into mobilization. All the mages remaining in the palace have been gathered to try out every available spell. They even summoned high priests from the Western Holy Church to see if they can heal the king. The sight alone was enough to invoke the deepest primal fear in people's heart. Confronted with such horrific sight, people still made up their mind to try to restore their king to normal. Even though everyone's face has been distorted due to fear, they still kept on working steadfastly. Yet none of them have been effective. There is no way they could save the king. The time fast forwards to the present. Having been informed that Shogo has awakened, the crowds bring their questions to him. Razan is rather sympathetic seeing his former colleagues. But nowadays Razan is Diablo's subordinate, so he needs to betray his companions without hesitation. Their own choices will decide their fates. But just for a bit, for a tiny bit, Razan feels sorry for them. Everything has been according to Diablo's plan. Faking his coma was also part of the plan. As Diablo's servant, Razan was told what would happen to this nation and what they should do accordingly. Razan has already come to a realization. This nation is about to become a toy of the Demon Lord. If the kingdom of Pharmus becomes a stage for them to toy around with human puppets, it would be the end of this kingdom. But this doesn't seem to be such an unfortunate fate for the citizens. As Diablo explains the Demon Lord's plan to Razan, a sense of hope sparked within his heart. An image of the land of Pharmus stepping towards a future of prosperity began to emerge in his head. The ancient institution must be dismantled in order for that future to come true. Razan couldn't help but to think so. That's why he is acting according to the plan. Calm down. I am Razan. I have been protecting the king and was able to escape back to our kingdom with the help of Hiro-sama. What? You, no, aren't you Shogo? Shogo, that brat. I see, so that's the case. But even with that being said, it is still quite confusing. We couldn't believe that Razan-sama has become that arrogant Shogo. At first, no one was in the proper state to believe this, but upon recalling that Razan is a powerful mage, they begin to make sense of the situation. But then they start to question Razan. You mentioned that you managed to escape. Does that mean the Pharmus army, that our nation's great army has lost to those monsters? What really happened? How dare you all come back after your disgraceful defeat? The nobles begin to question out loud. They are the pillars of this nation, but in reality, many cunning foxes among the nobles only wish to obtain personal gains through the banner of war. To these people, they didn't even consider the possibility of sustaining financial loss as a result of defeat. Everyone, please calm down. Let's hear what Razan-sama has to say. Someone came out at that moment to bring silence to the crowd. It's Marquis Mola. This, of course, is also part of the plan. Last night Diablo had taken action to establish contact with him through Fuse, the branch head of the Freedom Association in the Kingdom of Bloomend. Everything has been going according to Diablo's plan. First, to have Razan explain that the hero Yom has gone to negotiate the exchange of a cure, healing potion, with the leader of the monsters. This will cause an order to be passed on to the gatekeeper to make preparations to welcome Yom's party back into the city without the need of identification. Next, he will explain the situation with the Pharmas army. The crowds are shocked as soon as he begins to explain. Indeed, because of the line Storm Dragon Veldora has been revived. How could this be? Why was that evil dragon revived at that place? Impossible. Hasn't Veldora been defeated already? Then we must hurry and report to the Western Holy Church to request the aid of the Holy Knight Order, Crusader. We are done for now. If what Razan-sama just said is true, we won't be able to do anything about it. All our reserve combat forces in the nation wouldn't at all be sufficient to face such enemy. That's right. We have to get the Pharmas Knight Order back as soon as possible. Indeed. If magic communication won't work, we will have General Fulgen to relay the message. There is no time for that. We should all bail now before the people catch wind of this, or else we won't even have time to escape. Some have been struck in panic by fear. Some are pressing to strike first. Some even suggest evacuating without the citizens. Everyone has a different reaction. Then, Marquis Mulla gave the crowd a shout to shut everyone up. Silence. Even if the Night Order is fine, the result would be the same. By the way, Sita-sama, would it really help if we panic like you? Where would we escape to? That storm dragon is a real rank catastrophe monster. The ministers begin to regain their composure. Razan continues his explanation after this momentary silence. He then begins to explain what happened on the battlefield. He retells the complete defeat of the Pharmas army, the tragedy, made-up lie, that led to the disappearance of the entire army as a result of the resurrection of Storm Dragon Veldora. The crowds fall into silence after Razan's explanation. Everyone is speechless. The entire thing seems too ridiculous to be true. Everyone thinks that it would be obvious. It is under such circumstances that some begin to raise doubts about the situation while Razan answers them one by one. Razan-sama, is this all true? Is it true that our army has disappeared without a trace? Yes. Our army was fighting those monsters when the dragon of that land was awakened. What nonsense is this? How strange would that be? Even the Western Holy Church has told us that they've eliminated all the dragons. Are you suggesting that they've been lying to us? No, that's not the case. Veldora would disappear for a period of time. However, a true dragon cannot be eliminated. It will eventually be reborn in some corner of the world. But we simply couldn't have anticipated that the interval was so short, and that it was revived so nearby. Razan-sama, what happened to the other survivors? Why yeah, what about General Fulgen? You mentioned that all of the army has gone missing, but shouldn't there at least be a few persons left? Upon being asked so, Razan responded, shaking his head. In reality, they've all been killed by the fury of Rimuru. But Diablo has discussed this with Razan and ordered him to cover up the matter with the lie that the army has gone missing. What do you mean by that? I've already told you, they've gone missing. With Veldora's revival, both the knights and monsters at the scene vanished. We were the only ones who remained. No way. I'll ask this one more time, there is no survivor who escaped at all, and have they really all gone missing? There were supply corps behind the front line. Are they okay? Razan falls silent. His eyes fell to the ground quietly. Seeing this, everyone has to take his words for it. The Night Order has truly been annihilated. A minister suddenly breaks into tears. He was the one that asked about the well-being of the supply corps. Because he had sent his son to fight his first war. He even pulled some strings to move his son to the rear to distance him from the dangerous front line. Yet all of his efforts were for nothing. At the end of the day, he only allowed his son to join this war because he believed there was a fortune to rob from the monsters, and that victory was ensured. In the face of this twisted turn of fate, he broke down in tears. But in overview of this tragic event, he is just one of the victims. The total number of people missing in action amount to an astounding 20,000. That is an unprecedented loss of life. Even though they are labeled as missing in action, the hope of them returning is zero. They are as good as dead. Everyone now can't help but think that this has to do with Veldora's revival. To be more specific, they think the vanished army was used as a live sacrifice. Veldora is thus under this false accusation, which works in Rimuru's favor. Diablo's wise plan has successfully manipulated the beliefs of the top ministers of the Kingdom of Pharmas through Razan. Soft scene break. It is during this time, almost as if it is perfectly timed, sounds of footstep begin to echo in the throne room. It is Yom's party. The ones accompanying him are his advisor Murin, bodyguard Grucius, and secretary Rommel the mage. Diablo, dressed in a neat butler outfit, is the last one to enter. However, his attitude is quite arrogant in juxtaposition of his role as a butler. The throne room of this castle is normally not accessible to people low in the social hierarchy, such as adventurers. However, with Razan's intervention, their guides were ordered beforehand to lead Yom to this location. "Sorry to keep you guys waiting. I've finally managed to convince that guy." Yom speaks to Razan while representing his party. He still couldn't quite change his rude tone and straightforward attitude. After all, the noble style isn't bred in one day, so you can't really blame him. But in the eyes of the nobles, his attitude can only be described as brusque. This led to some vocal discontent. "Who on earth are you? How rude of you to speak in such plebeian tone." Although Yom has arrived with the medicine to cure the king, a matter that was brought up before, one of the ministers still reprimanded him. Of course, he has heard the name of Hero Yom. He has also seen Yom's portraits everywhere he goes. He knows too that it is Yom who is coming. Moreover, given how special Yom's full body armor is, he won't mistake him for another even if he had only heard of him. Yet to this minister, none of these matter. This is the royal palace, and how things work here is different from that of the public sphere. To him it is common sense. That's why he couldn't stand how rude Yom's tone was. However, this caused Razan to panic. He looks towards Diablo to see whether the minister's words have provoked him. After all, he never revealed his plans to the ministers, so the outcome, whatever it may be, will fall on Razan's shoulders. He understands why the minister shouted out those words. There is nothing wrong with such action if it's any other day. But right now, it is simply inappropriate given the gravity of the situation. Razan regrets having not explained the details of some matters and decides to step in as the mediator. "Please hold on a second, Carlos Dono. These people are our saviors. We are relying on them to save our king." "What? These are the people who saved you?" I can't believe Razan, guardian of this kingdom, would say something like this. What really happened out there? Even though some of them are still not convinced, Razan remains, after all, the best mage in the kingdom of Pharmus. His power as a magic caster is unquestionable, in addition to his hundreds of years' feat of guarding the kingdom. Razan's words are no comments to pass by their head. The nobles then decide to take it down a notch for the time being. With that being said, they are only reacting so violently due to the imminent destruction of their nation and the revival of Eldora. That's why they were bluffing. Because of that, they were able to get the details of how Razan was saved. They've now learned whether their personal safety can be ensured or not. Just as Razan is about to answer their doubts, someone interjects from the side. "Allow me to answer that question for you." It's Archbishop Rahiem. He is pretending that his body has just recovered, and he came to fill in the gaps of Razan's story. Razan celebrates internally and exchanges a look with Rahiem, then surreptitiously glances at Diablo to see him smiling at how things are progressing. Reassured, Razan allows Rahiem to do the explanation. "Then, could you enlighten us about how Razan Sama's party has been saved?" With regards to the revival of Storm Dragon, Razan Sama has informed you of the matter. The two armies clashed on the warfield and engaged in an intense fight. We were advantageous in terms of number, but those monsters had a better fortified position. The battle was harder fought than we imagined. The hall falls silent with only Rahiem's voice. He eyes Diablo as he continues his explanation. According to him, the chaotic aura of the warfield was key to Veldora's revival. And as Veldora suddenly emerges on the battlefield, he attacked indiscriminately and both sides suffered the consequences. Razan nods in agreement and adds. "I was there alongside Rahiem Sama. We really went all out trying to protect our king." He emphasizes on his inability. Rahiem continues on top of that. "Indeed, it was just like that. I was staying in the base behind the front line alongside Razan Sama. We were truly desperate at the sights before us as the tragedy unfolds. We witnessed death himself before our eyes as the majestic storm dragon devastated everything. We were both prepared to die before someone showed up between us and the storm dragon." Razan peeks at Diablo. He nods in satisfaction. Seeing this, Razan and Rahiem nods to each other. "He was the leader of the monsters, Raimoru Sama." "Indeed. Both Rahiem Sama and I thought our death was at our doorstep. But, Raimoru Sama, ruler of the monsters, showed up to persuade Veldora Sama." Razan's words bewildered and shocked the crowds. Persuaded? Could they communicate with each other? Speaking of that, It is no different from suicide to get in the way of that evil dragon Veldora like that. Most creatures would be killed instantly if bathed in that concentrated amount of magicule. About that, how did he? A commotion breaks out among the nobles. If they could communicate, perhaps he could truly calm Veldora down. The nobles thought so with much hope and expectation as they looked to Razin and Rahim. Veldora may not invade the kingdom of Farmus after all, but it would still be a huge mistake if they just sat here without taking any precautions. But, no one present has a solution to what they need to do next. Now that they got wind of the disappearance of the 20,000 elite soldiers, including that of King's Knight Order, no one dares to come out with a half-baked plan to battle Veldora. The best solution they have at the moment is to eliminate the threat of Veldora through negotiation, or so does everyone thinks. As you all know, this Rimuru-sama is the ruler of monsters and the leader of the Jura Great Forest. Didn't he give himself that title? As one of the ministers speaks, Diablo frowns in displeasure. Razin quickly interrupts the minister upon seeing this by replying. That's not the case at all. I've seen the monster town with my own eyes, it is more than qualified to be called the capital of a kingdom. Moreover, even the Dryads who oversee the Jura Great Forest follows this Rimuru-sama. Razin explains that Rimuru was able to communicate with Veldora through the aid of the Dryads. These words added some convincing elements to his claims. The overseers of the forest are rather famous and are known to be powerful monsters that guard the location where Veldora slumbers. According to the ranking of Freedom Association, they are creatures above rank A, presumed to be special rank A, a dangerous species indeed. If even the Dryads decided to follow him, the power of this monster known as Rimuru is clearly not be underestimated. Since every noble here is of a high echelon, they all have hired people to gather valuable information, hence, they all started to realize this fact. I see. It would seem we have made a mistake in making him our enemy. Upon recalling the fact that they were the ones who initiated the attack on the Monster Kingdom, the ministers are all troubled by this, although none of them wants to admit. This is bad. Even if we can negotiate with the evil dragon, we are still enemy with that Rimuru, not good at all. One of the ministers mentions this only to resonate the same sentiments across the board. But they aren't considering the option of asking help from Rimuru to negotiate, instead they are worrying about whether angering Rimuru would further instigate Veldora's tantrum. It is at this moment Yom, who has previously been completely ignored, steps to the center of the hall. He spoke in a calm voice that garnered the attention of everyone present. I see how it is then, everyone. You need not worry about that part. When I marched against the Orc Lord, I once worked alongside Rimuru-san. He is a surprisingly good-natured person, and wishes to coexist peacefully with humans. However, Yom was cut short as he was halfway through his speech. Oh. If that's the case, we shall have Yom-sama as our mediator to pass on our demands. We shall discuss that matter later. You may await orders in another room. The noble Carlos, who has just scolded Yom, interrupts his explanation and gives him the order arrogantly. The difference in social status is truly troubling. Even as a warrior, Yom is still a civilian in his blood without even a knighthood. Most of noble descent still look down on him. Carlos is a highly ranked count and is perhaps the best example of nobles who are too conscious of differences in status. It may be tolerated if he displays this attitude on any other day, but at this instant, given several examples of this poor behavior already, it is most inappropriate to act in this manner. A few nobles begin to stare at Carlos with discontent, incredulous at his lack of self-awareness. Oi, don't get ahead of yourself now, Yom said. About that, the man is normally quite nice, but right now the circumstance is different. Surely you all understand the reason behind it. What do you mean? Aren't you guys the ones responsible for attacking Rimuru-san's country, right? Bad idea. Some of Rimuru-san's companions ended up dead. He was livid with indignation. How dare a mere plebeian spit out such nonsense? Who gave you permission to meddle in state affairs? It is simply convenient that you happen to be on good terms with that Rimuru something, and as a hero, you should also do your duty to act as a mediator, so figure something out already. Ignoring Yom's words, the arrogant Carlos says so without feeling a shred of shame. Yom resents being talked down to. TSK, that's why I hate nobles. Yom complains to himself internally, while still maintaining a calm facade, and continues his explanation. Now listen here, y'all need to first listen to what I have to say. You didn't seem to have sent any envoy or declaration of war prior to the invasion. Instead, didn't you send the otherworlders to cause a riot there? I had indeed gone to negotiate a peace and was dumbfounded to learn of this. But still, the kingdom of Farmus is nonetheless my home. I don't intend to see my homeland destroyed either, so I somehow managed to calm him down and beg him to negotiate for peace. Besides, Razan Sandar has also asked me of the same favor. Yom suppresses his anger and finishes his explanation. If the arrogant nobles decided to cause a scene just now during his explanation, the fall of the kingdom of Farmus would have been assured. Yom thinks to himself, having sensed the aura emitted by Diablo behind his back. Yom only truly realized the meaning of evil after meeting Diablo. He knows this crowd in front of him are merely petty scoundrels. True evil would not play along the score of any authority. They are true egoists who only act out of their own will. Right now, the only thing keeping Diablo from lashing out is his loyalty towards Rymuru's command. But if he is to lose his temper at this point, it would be bad for Yom's coming kingship. If he handles the nobles too kindly, it would lead to future nuisances. But if he is to kill them off, it will most certainly lead to a bad name among the pubic. The most ideal situation is to have the opposing nobles start a conflict by themselves. That's why Diablo has kept silent and has only been observing quietly. But there are still rooms for doubts. If the nobles are to seriously piss off Diablo, the situation may escalate very quickly. If he thinks there is no need to keep these lots alive, then the nobles would probably be killed on the spot. Yom has discussed about this scenario with Murin and Grusius. They also agree about the possibility. People who can manipulate someone as strong as Razan in their palms are powerful minorities even among greater magians. And if such person as Diablo decides to get serious, the kingdom of Farmus, which has now lost all of its military force, couldn't at all set up a resistance. Therefore, Yom's party feels much more nervous as compared to the nobles. Razan shares the same sentiment as Yom. Diablo clearly doesn't care about human lives, whether those of nobles or civilians. They are of no value to him. It is obvious from how he treated King Edmales. It is hard to imagine what Diablo would do if someone dares insult the monster ruler Rimuru. It will be fine if the noble Carlos is the only one he inflicts his rage on. But if they don't handle this well, every single citizen may be wiped out. Knowing this very clearly, Razan tries his hardest to hide how daunted he felt and agrees with Yom's words. Carlos Sama, please behave yourself now. What? Razan Sama, are you siding with this damn peasant? I told you to shut up. Don't butt in when you aren't aware of the circumstances. Razan rebukes Carlos harshly. Surprised to see someone as composed and calculated as Razan break down like this, even the other nobles decided to remain quiet and observe the situation. Listen up, everyone. What Yom-sama just spoke of is all true. We were doomed to defeat once Shogo and the other two were killed by the monster lieutenants, Top Brass, and the Storm Dragon killed off our frontal assault. The only survivors were me, Rahiem-sama, and King Edmales. We were captured and were only released thanks to Yom-sama's kind intervention. Razan begins to recite the prepared materials. No one is doubting him and things moves on smoothly. Razan, Rahiem and Yom take turns speaking while Marquis Mulla and Earl Herman frequently intervene to keep things well in hand. Their play to cover each other up is able to convince the ministers gathered at the location. If that's the case, the king was cursed on the battlefield and ended up like this, right? The monster king only agreed to assist us after the king's promise of peaceful coexistence. How could the great kingdom of Farmus submit to the rules of monsters? But this can't be helped. Or else do you wish to wage war against them? If we are to fight against them, Storm Dragon would become our enemy. No, about that. Even the trump cards otherworlders couldn't win against the monster generals. On top of that, they would also need to deal with a revived Veldora. They look down on the monster kingdom of Jura Tempest Federation, but right now their military might alone has outmatched the kingdom of Farmus. It would be absolutely foolish trying to confront them head-on now. The king must have been forced to admit defeat too, that's what the crowds believe. And then, a conclusion is reached. Let's accept this proposal for now. Does anyone object? Most people begin to nod in agreement after hearing Marquis Muller's words. Although some may be unpleasant about the decision, none of them dared to raise their opinion. There is a consensus among the ministers to halt the war. Just like that, the kingdom of Farmus decided to enter negotiation with Tempest Federation. With the dust settled on that matter, Diablo decides that it is time for him to take action. Kufafufafu, wise choice. Then I shall release the king as promised. With that being said, he casually steps forward. Who are you? My apologies. My name is Diablo, subject to my majestic ruler, Rimuru-sama and his loyal butler. Diablo announces proudly. Most ministers look confused upon hearing his name, not knowing how to respond. Diablo's attitude seems all too natural for them to interject at all. His self-introduction however has rendered someone in fear, that being Razan. Only Razan realizes the implication of his words. He understands what it means for a demon to have a name. There are many things in this world that proves the idiom ignorance is bliss. Razan secretly envies the ignorant ones and sighs behind everyone's back. Some people remain vigilant towards Diablo and plan to strike when the opportunity reveals. These are the Imperial Knights, who have been observing everyone's action in the dark. Diablo walks straight towards the king's throne. The knights move to block him. However, Diablo doesn't even care one bit as he approaches the box on the throne. Some of the Imperial Knights were shocked as their bodies becomes numb, rendering them unable to move. They couldn't even make a sound. The Royal Guards are considered rank A by the standard of the Freedom Association. Even the ones not up to rank A are considered elites of elites among rank Bs. They remained in the royal palace to guard the members of the royal family as well as the head ministers. They can be considered as the strongest combat force in the kingdom of Farmus. There are around 100 knights in the room, yet all are unable to move an inch before Diablo. But Diablo hasn't done anything yet. It is out of fear. It is out of their sharp survival instincts that they've realized how dangerous Diablo is. Be it all, will you? Or do you all wish to die in vain as well? Diablo sounds clearly satisfied as he says so. He then continues to move forward in front of the box where King Edmales, who has been turned into meatloaf, resides. Diablo takes out the full recovery potion from his pocket and pours on the meatloaf that is King Edmales. And without anyone's notice, he removes the spell on the king casted by Ch.1. A dramatic change takes place. With the potion poured onto him, the king's body is instantly restored to its healthy form. And so, does Diablo's plan come to fruition. The doctors and mages are all amazed and begin to cheer after witnessing the king being transformed back to human form after they've exhausted all available options. What is this medicine? This is the full recovery potion DM. This is our nation's special product, top-notch healing potion exported only to friendly nations. Diablo answers gently to the question of one of the ministers. After all, this potion will become the main commodity of the Tempest Federation. Full recovery potion, an item that could allegedly to be dug up from ruins of ancient magic kingdoms. It is a legendary healing potion that would even heal amputated limbs after consumption, whose fame is only rivaled by that of the resurrection potion. The recipe for the potion has been long lost, but it is rumored that the dwarves have been trying to recreate it. If it can be mass-produced, there would be countless people coming after the potion. Gable has revealed the specifics of it to Diablo prior, and he caught wind of Rimuru's intent of promoting the potion. Unlike Ch.1, he was able to complete the intelligence collection within a very short period of time. It is because of Diablo's wit that he was able to put on this dramatic and effective play under such circumstances by exploiting the king of Farmus. His dedication can only be described as perfect. One can see how Diablo never compromises in terms of his personality. That's why it is terrifying to make an enemy like him. As for Razan and Rahim, who both feared that Diablo would massacre everyone in the castle, Diablo has long sensed their thoughts, but he wasn't planning to do such thing at all. If he did such things, Rimuru would no longer trust him. And since the plan of crowning Yom as the new king has fallen on his shoulders, Diablo would not make such a simple blunder. He calculates with cunningness and uses both fear and compassion as his tools. The two tactics cycled in practice, he is able to puppeteer the beliefs of these highly ranked nobles, the heads of this nation. He believes it would be wiser to make them obedient rather than pitting them against us. Next, he would single out fools who picked the wrong side and eliminate them. That is the general direction of Diablo's plan. The crowds hold their breath as the king was restored back to his human form under everyone's eyes. The onlookers must have thought it was entirely the effect of the full recovery potion. "Are you all right?" Diablo asks, while King Edmales nods with a nervous expression. "Why yes, thank you, for saving me." The king replies in a weakened tone, partly out of genuine exhaustion. He is dancing to Diablo's score. Diablo's unique skill Tempter is under the same system of law as Rimuru's unique skill Heartless One. He is able to use his skill to achieve complete dominance over whomever pledges loyalty to Diablo. Now that King Edmales has already been affected by Tempter, if he is to have any thought of betrayal, Diablo would immediately be aware of it. Seeing that the king has been restored, the servants quickly fetch his clothes. The king got a moment to rest with his clothes on as Diablo signals him with his eyes. The king nods in response. "Well then, King of Pharmus. My liege Rimoru-sama has a message for you." "Speak then, honorable envoy of Tempest Federation." At this instant, the King of Pharmus has acknowledged the Tempest Federation to be a nation. This is undoubtedly a gesture to everyone at the scene. It is King Edmali's proclamation to them that any future affair with Tempest Federation would be that between nations and acknowledging Tempest Federation to be a negotiable subject with a functioning society. As such, Diablo has been officially received as the messenger sent by a hostile nation Pharmus is at war with. King Edmali's has welcomed him with the highest honor, but personally he did so to avoid provoking Diablo. Thanks to the king's announcement, the opposing nobles are no longer voicing their opinions. Regardless, they don't intend to continue the conflict further. So perhaps the king's announcement was more to protect his own subjects rather than announcing for the sake of Diablo. Very well, allow me to deliver the message. A week from now, His Grace hopes both kingdoms would send out representatives to sign a peace treaty here. But before we reach a peaceful agreement, here are the demands we propose to your nation. Diablo takes out a piece of parchment from his pocket. I shall grant you the chance to choose. With this being the header, the parchment contains the written conditions for a truce demanded by yours truly Rimoru, but only in name. The actual content of the conditions are, in reality, Diablo's demands. The content is quite excessive. Option 1, the king is to abdicate and compensate for the war. Option 2, Pharmus is to surrender and be vassalized by Tempest Federation. Option 3, which is barely an option at all, both option 1 and 2 are rejected and the war would continue to burn Pharmus to the ground. What would appear to be the maintenance of their current status quo is, in fact, an illusion. Now that they've acknowledged the Tempest Federation as a legitimate nation, their action of waging war against Tempest Federation without a declaration of war wouldn't stand justified. At least not by the surrounding nations. The Western Holy Church would probably be busy fighting Valdora, that's why the crowd think they won't bother to save the kingdom of Pharmus. The demands are more like threats. It is telling them to either agree or die. They have to make room for agreement to prevent the destruction of their nation. Diablo intentionally raises the parchment high and recites its content dramatically. With a delighted expression, he joyfully awaits the nobles' reactions. As soon as he finishes reading the treaty, some minister begins to mumble to themselves this is just coercion. However, that doesn't much concern Diablo as he bows towards King Edmali's. These are our demands. You have 1 week from today. Do give us your response by that time. Wait. That's quite rush with the timing. We'll need at least a month. Hush. I don't have such patience. No, you can't leave it like this. This is no small feat that we can decide with a palace meeting alone. We will have to gather nobles from around the region and decide through the National Council of the Kingdom of Pharmus. Did I not tell you to hush? I care not in the slightest of any difficulty you may have in doing so. But heed this well, don't try anything funny. I'll not accept any excuse to delay the matter. If we don't hear from you in 7 days, we will consider that your nation has chosen option 3, war. Consider this before giving your answer. Diablo finishes what he has to say and leaves the Pharmus king and the nobles without even turning his head. How stubborn! Someone shouts, but Diablo won't change his mind for such a petty thing. He leaves Yome's party as soon as he finishes his business here. Hard scene break. After Diablo's departure, King Edmali's issues orders to summon all of the nobles to an imperial conference. The meeting was planned to be 3 days later. Even with the use of magic, the available time is still quite limited for all of the nobles to be gathered. But that really can't be helped since Diablo has only given them a week. A solution must be drafted before that time. The timing is indeed pressing. That's why the king has put out the order in such a rush to summon all the nobles within 3 days. The king's servants begin to hasten their movements. The scene becomes rather busy as everyone prepares for the meeting. King Edmali's looks exhausted as he glances around the crowd. I believe my fellow ministers have realized the magnitude of the issue too. We shall draft a plan for the future before all the nobles are gathered. Tomorrow, we will alter the location, so I may share my thoughts with you all. I shall listen to your opinions then. He says so rather powerlessly while looking at his trusted subordinates. What he is certain of at the moment is that the kingdom of Pharmus is stepping towards its demise. Because of the high stakes, there shouldn't be any bickering among his inner circle. but there would undoubtedly be endless conflicts when the conference is held. That's why the king is trying to get everyone on the same page before the imperial conference is held. In addition, he needed to prevent unnecessary sacrifices. King Admales has secretly made up his mind as he plans these things out. The next day, the crowd convened in the conference hall once more. The ones being summoned are all the most trusted subordinates of the king. Apart from them, for unknown reasons, Marquis Mola, the leading figure of the centrists, and his follower, Earl Herman, are also present. In order to clear up the situation, King Admales begins to explain the ins and outs of the whole event. Everyone listens to the king in silence. Even though both Razan and Rahim have spoken on the issue, the ministers are now finally plunged into silence, having recognized the frightening reality. Marquis Mola suddenly opens up to ask the king, "Your Majesty, is it true? Did you say that Vildora has been revived?" Just as Razan and Rahim have said. In my opinion, the only issue is which one of the three options are appropriate for us. Moreover, we need to discuss our future plans past this event. King Admales gives his confirmation and urges the crowd to give their opinions on the matter. They've been waiting for the king's permission, so the crowd begin to express their views. Jura Great Forest is a forbidden land guarded by Valdora. Even the Eastern Empire doesn't dare to march on it unprepared. It would be utmost foolishness for us to challenge it alone. That's most true. We don't stand a chance to win. Our country would be destroyed if we continue fighting them. Right. With that being said, it leaves us with option 1 and 2. No way can we be vassalized. We may change our stance on the matter, but we cannot become servants to monsters. Don't hammer it down so quickly. We don't want any more conflicts. How could this be? No landed nobility would agree to such madness. There will be civil unrest. Could this be the true intent of those monsters? Perhaps we should have Your Majesty step down first and pay the reparation. But are you all aware of the details of the reparation? The nation would collapse. 10,000 stellar gold coins. That exchanges to around 1 million gold coins. That would be 20% of our total national tax. Impossible. But consider our options. Isn't it at least better than having our kingdom destroyed? Indeed. At least they aren't trying to drain our wallet. That means they still have some decency. In the end, we still have to accept those conditions. I think so too. King Admales remained silent throughout the period and listened carefully to what the ministers and nobles have to say. He thinks to himself as he listens. How beautiful, that person possesses both a petty appearance of a young girl and a menacing aura that affirms his presence. He is the monster ruler called Rimuru, the fearsome demon lord. Simply recalling those experiences renews the fear deep down in his heart. Dignity and whatnot are all overruled by fear. The king doesn't even dare to raise an opposition to his enemy again. Because it reminds him of the days he was turned into meatloaf and force-fed his own hands and feet. The king does not want to experience that suffering again at any cost, that's why he has made up his mind to convince the ministers. After the defeat, there are still countless things under question. The monsters, surprisingly, have principles. With the birth of a new demon lord, the storm dragon was also revived. King Admales realizes his utter defeat as he begins to accept these realities. He was blinded by his desire and made the wrong judgment. Had he begun their relationship peacefully, there may be a different future they could paint. But it is all too late at this point. There can't be any missteps from now on. Diablo mentioned that they can choose whichever out of the three if they so desire. In other words, whichever option selected would all help Diablo to reach his goal. With that being the case, it would be the right call to choose the option with the least potential harm. King Admales begins to ponder on it by himself, which option would cause the least damage. Option 3 is obviously a no-go. Not only the citizens, everyone would be killed. Option 2 should be further evaluated. It is an option that can ensure both the well-beings and prosperity of the citizens. He has had a glance of the beautiful streets of Tempest Federation. In that kingdom, some adventurers are even having a good time hanging out with monsters. Perhaps they are not bad in nature after all. It's a beautiful thought that's crossed Admales' head, but he still decides to not settle on that option. It probably won't work. Without witnessing those sights by themselves, people won't place their trust in monsters. Even I would consider these to be tales of a madman had I only heard them in words. Besides, the nobles have a duty to protect their subjects. Even if the nobles surrender unconditionally, it would be impossible to have them all willingly vassalized. You simply can't force them into obeying, even with hell breaking loose. It would most likely invoke protests from the neighboring nations as well, nor would the monster kingdom be recognized by the Western State Council. He would most likely end up being assassinated if he is to ignore these hindrances by using his authority as a king. As for option 1, it seems to be their safest choice. Abdication of king means exactly what it says, King Edmales must step down. A new heir would swear not to wage war again and would be given the throne. It is rather coercive considering the amount of reparation they are demanding, but it can't be helped. The cost of peace is much lower than resuming this war. But that would only be the case if the monsters cease to demand more from his kingdom. There is also a hidden agenda behind the two demands. Diablo has also discussed in length with King Edmales about it. He wants to crown Yom as the new king, and on this basis, he will build a new kingdom. Edmales has 3 children, his eldest daughter, youngest daughter, and eldest son. Both daughters of his have been married to other kingdoms, leaving the crown available only to his eldest son, the prince. But he has yet to even reach the age of 10 and is far from mature. If King Edmales is to step down now, there will likely be a struggle for the throne. King Edmales is well aware of the people who desire the throne. The head of the Optimates is his own little brother, Duke Edward. He can easily tell Diablo's true intent as he analyzes things this way. Diablo intends to have the Royalist and the Optimates fight to the death over the inheritance of the crown. Now that he thinks about it, whichever option of the 3 would eventually lead to conflict. And their evaluation of which one to choose is all just a part of Diablo's plan. In other words, it doesn't matter which option we choose. King Edmales sighs internally. The outcome would be the same. And if that's the case, settle down, everyone. Please heed my thought. King Edmales proposes so after everyone has expressed their opinions. I've heard that their kingdom is called Jura Tempest Federation. Many different races residing in the Jura Great Forest now follow the ruler called Rimuru. I think we could join this big family as well. Are you suggesting we should be vassalized by them? No, that is not the case. I am simply surprised by how well managed that kingdom is. Edmales pauses upon saying so and looks around the crowd with determination on his face. This war is all my fault. I did it not for our people, but out of my own desire. Because of that, even God has given up on me. My arrogance has led to the awakening of Veldora to bring disaster to my kingdom Farmus. Had I listened to the advice of Marquis Mulla and Earl Herman, this could all have been prevented. Sire, that is too kind of you. I am most grateful for your highness' praise. Edmales replies to the two with a sound. Then he begins to spill his gut feelings. There won't be a second chance, nor will there be a second time. It is because of him, Rimuru Dono, the leader of monsters, that I was able to survive. So, this will not happen again. If I am to make the same mistake twice, it will not only be me who is doomed, but all of our people. At this point, my reputation and dignity are all irrelevant now. We should prevent our people from being affected by this. As for what we should do to turn things around, and what would be good for the people, we should all aim now to come up with such solution. The ministers are all shocked as to freeze at the scene. That's because the king, the devious and selfish king, has confessed his wrongdoing. Not only so, he has reached out to everyone present for an ideal solution. No wonder why everyone is surprised. These ministers also begin to reflect upon their past actions, having seen the regrets on the king's face. In the end, they've really only used their honor as an excuse to protect their own selfish interests. Now they've finally come to realize that deeply. The ministers rise up from their seats and kneel before the king. Then, apologies, sire. We've also been foolish in the past. We shall find out the best solution, for the people of this nation. Marquis Mulla speaks out for everyone at the scene. The ministers all begin to kowtow without a word of complaint. After which, they would invite Yom's party as advisors to continue the meeting, without knowing when it will end. Hard scene break. Just like that, I gave them some shock education. Diablo reports to me with a smile. Hold on. There is too much going on that I don't even know where to start asking. But there's something that has been on my mind the most. Did you really show it to them? Yes. I think it is most effective to invoke fear. So you did. You really showed them that. That being the meatloaf. I don't intend to praise Ch.1 even though she looks quite happy about it. No wonder they wet their pants seeing this. I would undoubtedly vomit seeing it if it was me from before, reincarnating. It is truly that disturbing. By the way, this is totally what a demon lord would do. My image as an upstanding man with principle has now been turned into that of a bloodlusting monster. Never mind, you can't rewind time to undo it. But in terms of methods, it does seem quite effective in winning their trust by giving them the stick before a carrot. This sounds like how a Yakuza, mafia, group would function. I jump down from Ch.1's laps. I decide to turn back to human form and drink some black tea to restore some tranquility in my mind. Oh, and about the condition of a peace treaty, I proposed a reparation of 10,000 stellars. I spat out my black tea. 10,000 stellars, you. I did order him to demand reparations to alienate the king and the nobles, but this amount is just ridiculously large. It is so large in fact that the neighboring nations would probably not forgive such action. In this world, barter economy is still the mainstream. There may be transactions with currency in large cities, such as the capital of Bloomington and Ingratia, but there are far more population in rural areas who have never seen denomination greater than silver coin. In simpler terms, the value of currency is surprisingly high. A copper coin is around 10 yens in Japan, a silver coin to 1,000 yens and gold coin to around 100,000. Even though this is how one would generally feel, such beliefs would only hold true in urban areas. The reality is far different. To be more specific, the average income of an urban laborer is around 6 silver coins a day. In terms of monthly income, it is around 150 silver coins, roughly 1,500,000 yens. Whereas in comparison, a country folk may make less than 100 silver coins in a year. The wage gap between the rich and the poor is quite significant, with the latter earning less than 100,000 yen a year. However, there aren't that many diversions in this world, so there are fewer places to spend the money, which renders currency to be less necessary. That's why there is no fundamental difference in lifestyle between the two classes even with such a huge wage gap. In other words, right now this world's economy is still somewhat healthy without the impact of globalization and inflow of financial capital. Now is the time to build a greater economic body. Diablo's intelligence is really something else. When I revealed my plan of coexistence and growth, he seemed to have understood thoroughly the structure of economic dominance. In order to make commodities with different value flow in the market, currency is definitely warranted. If one can control the flow of currency, one would hold the world economy in his grip. There are many nations in this world that use national currency produced by the state, but right now only the general currency produced by Dwargan are mainstream in all markets. In other words, it isn't that difficult to build a global economic network by introducing a special currency to this world. Diablo would probably do so and may have already planned this out. But we are getting off track. Let's talk about the exchange rate of currency that has been settled in this country, Farmus. A copper coin exchanges to around 100 yens, a silver coin to 10,000 and a gold coin to approximately 1 million. A reparation of 10,000 stellars would be demanding around 1 trillion yens of war compensation. This world is not as materially abundant as Japan from my last life, so there is no need for any nation to ever prepare such an enormous national budget. It is then only natural that such reparation would be considered a ridiculous price. Aren't you demanding a bit too much? Kufa-fu-fa-fu, no need to worry. I've already given them 3 choices, but in the end they can only choose one. Option 3 is naturally outside of their consideration while option 2 is impossible to choose. At the end of the day they will only choose the first and negotiate with us. But it would save some time for us if they choose option 3, Diablo says so laughing. Of course they have to choose the first option. They may try to negotiate a discount. No, they aren't that stupid. They are probably unable to pay up in one go, so they may negotiate an installment. Diablo seems to have seen through me and says, a discount is not gonna happen, the kingdom of Farmus will have to pay in full. But it is hard to achieve in practice. Their economy would probably stagger with all those coins withdrawn from the market. That's true as well. It's clear that Diablo has some other intent. All they can do in response is to find a scapegoat. So that's the why. Diablo's rationale is as follows. They will first vouch for a down payment and then pay up the remaining debt with other things than coins. Whoever pays up the remaining debt does not matter, they can go on to cut ties with such individuals from the kingdom of Farmus. In this way, they can argue that the kingdom of Farmus has paid up their reparations. They then get to claim they've done their part even at the cost of provoking us. Although this strategy would only work if the people they deal with remain reasonable afterward, but it would be truly problematic if they use it against us. What would we do if this becomes true? We will proceed as planned. We can at least collect 1,000 stellars, and it would conclude the first phase of our plan. Hold on a second? On what ground do you conclude we would be able to collect at least 1,000 stellars by then? Oh, so that's what you were asking. Diablo says, as if implying that's easy, and goes on to explain regarding my question. In simpler terms, the reason seems to be that the stellars cannot be directly used in transactions. So that's how it is, I finally understood. I quickly come to realize with his explanation. The value of one stellar would be around 10 million to 100 million yen, so exchanging it to gold coins would be quite troublesome. That's why normally no one would think handing out these coins would cause much of any impact since they have no use unless in large-scale transactions. Has Diablo noticed this point? Gold coins are the primary currency stored for national budget expenditures, whereas the stellars are stored like securities and cannot be casually exchanged. There is no bank in this world, so saving them wouldn't generate any interest. That's why they would probably be more willing to compromise. Diablo is one hell of a character. I was just wondering whether we could at least get 100 to 300 stellars through negotiation. The reparations for each casualty would be 100 million yens. On top of that, there are also expenses of destroyed buildings and other things. I thought this is the bottom line that we won't compromise on. But if we can really get 1,000 stellars like what Diablo said, we won't mind going into a negotiation with them afterward. 100 million yen, that's an amount far beyond my expectation. But this seems hardly enough for Diablo, as he also plans to invoke a civil war. What a horrifying fella. What do you intend to do other than having them compensate our loss? Kufafufafu. King Admales may have been released, but he has already become my pawn. To be more specific, under the influence of my unique skill tempter, he would in a sense, act entirely according to my will. King Admales is now under the domination of unique skill tempter. Diablo thus has control over his life and death. Although he wouldn't be able to force his own will onto the king, Diablo can still take his life if he so wishes. As long as he remains loyal to Diablo, there naturally wouldn't be any issue. But the moment he bears the thought of betrayal, Diablo would be instantly notified. In other words, he may be killed at this very moment by Diablo. Having learned of this relationship, he would probably refrain from betraying. What a terrifying skill that utilizes fear to manipulate others. Be a good dog and live life safe and sound, that's what the skill is all about. Later, Diablo mentions that he has been observing King Admales' actions. He seems to have satisfied all the conditions prepared by Diablo for him to step down. Right now, there isn't even a need for Marquis Mulla and Earl Herman to step in and hold people accountable as originally planned. In other words, these people are all now royalists in aid of King Admales. This initially seems to be deviating from our original plan, but as soon as one gets to the detail, one would realize that the situation now is far more ideal for the plan to proceed. King Admales would step down and lead to the collapse of his authority. For this reason, the criticism would no doubt be directed to him and he will eventually be held accountable by the others. The Royal Knight Order was massacred by Rimuru-sama, leaving the royal family unguarded. Right now, it is suicide for King Admales to stand against the nobles. He is left to his own devices. That is what seems to be happening, but in reality, the Knight Order that protects the royal family is gone. The nobles wouldn't let go such a chance to make the king the scapegoat as Diablo describes. That seems to be the case. A conflict is inevitable. The Optimates may be planning to sacrifice King Admales, but it seems that the king has realized this and has been fighting hard to avoid such fate. About this, what could happen next? How would the royalists without any military to back themselves up avoid their defeat against the Optimates? Answer. Their solution would be to absorb Yome's party and stand together against the tide. In this way. Oh yeah, Yome is with us. King Admales also knows that I wish to make Yome the new king, that's why he is assisting his crowning. It would be too out of place to suddenly give away his throne to Yome. But if they could build him into a figure of their savior, they could perform the fall of royal family, and their will to be carried forward by Yome. King Admales is planning to get Yome on their side, that means we would be on the same boat then. I'm afraid it is just as you predict. Diablo delightfully smiles upon hearing my answer. Did I guess it right? With us as their reinforcement, they would gain the military might greater than that of the Royal Knight Order. The nobles may boss around believing the king to be powerless, but they wouldn't stand a chance against the hero Yome. If that's the case, all we need to do is to send reinforcement for Yome. Am I correct? Indeed. My servant Razan will contact us, I shall trouble you then. As expected of Diablo, Now we even have eyes on the matter since he's arranged his own underling to attend to these concerns. He is the perfect example of someone upholding the belief perfection is 80% planning and 20% working as this man elegantly conducts his mission. By the way, he even recruited Razan. I heard that he was a really strong person known as the Guardian of Pharmas, but it seems he is a nobody in Diablo's eyes. Since he has already recruited him, I shouldn't concern myself thinking about it. Would we be able to win in this way? What if, say, someone desiring the throne decides to conspire with some other country and form an alliance? Fuse-san and King Gazelle are pressuring the surrounding nations and keeping an eye on them. Although the likelihood of such an event is low. If it truly happens, I would participate in the fight as well, so please be reassured. Sensing the confidence in his words, I decide to let him do his thing. Speaking of Diablo, he really has hidden himself behind the curtain on the issue. It is quite frightening for me to think that he has left the important duty of taking over a nation completely to someone else to take care of. The probability of opposition forming an alliance is extremely small. But it aligns with the prediction of Wisdom King Raphael, so it should be fine for him to hand it over to other people. Alright, I'll leave the rest to you. Report to me if anything important happens. Understood. I shall resolve the matter properly, my liege. I give Diablo, who's kneeling on the ground, a couple of shoulder pats and tell him to continue and complete his mission. Soft scene break. With Diablo's explanation, the details of the plan have been confirmed. It happens so that Haruna is serving us some freshly made dessert to enjoy with our tea. Oh, isn't this matcha pudding? Yes, Rimuru-sama. It is not as good as ones made by Shuna-sama, but my skill has improved nonetheless. Haruna-san serves the pudding onto our table with a gentle smile. Immediately after, Veldora, who has been reading manga without saying a word to us this whole time, suddenly bumped into me looking like it is only natural. Oh? Is there a serving for me? Of course, Veldora-sama. Mr. Swagger here hums in response and reaches his hand out for the pudding on the plate. Veldora-sama, here's my end of the bargain as promised. Says Diablo, while giving his pudding to Veldora. Ga ha ha ha. Diablo, you are a man of your words. Veldora nods in satisfaction as he takes over the pudding from Diablo's hand. Speaking of that, that's quite the cheap bribe. Diablo, are you okay without eating? I ask, thinking Haruna could prepare an extra one, but was turned down with a bow from Diablo. I am simply paying in exchange of information, you don't have to concern yourself with my humble ordeal. It would seem he is quite the gentleman, having kept every end of his bargain. Wait a second, is there really a need to be so dramatic for one pudding? I think to myself. But I suppose I should stay quiet since Diablo has already accepted it. Is it now? Very well then. By the way, are you back in Tempest because you finished your work in Pharmas while I was at the Walpurgis banquet? I mentioned this to Diablo casually. When I left at midnight, he was not present. So, my guess is that I didn't catch him returning. However. Not quite. After issuing my threat to the king and the ministers, I went to different locations within Pharmas to examine their financial status. I was trying to investigate whether there was any flaw in my plan. That is when Veldora-sama contacted me and summoned me back. He just nonchalantly spilt out Veldora's secret. With a gadong sound, Veldora stood up nervously from his seat. I've suddenly recalled something to attend to. He is clearly trying to play dumb here, but you aren't getting away now. Arara, don't act so hastily now, Veldora-kun. I clamped my hand tightly on his shoulder in the blink of an eye. Wait. We have to be civil now. Civil my ass. What the hell do you think you are doing meddling with important business of others? Veldora tries his hardest to escape, but I take his pudding from him and order Haruna-san to not give any dessert to him for now. Veldora is crying, but I won't forgive him. How incredibly reckless. In terms of result, Veldora did help by breaking into the Walpurgis banquet, but that doesn't excuse what he did. If I forgive him today, he may end up causing some other trouble in the future. Thankfully, it was Diablo who responded to him. I can't even imagine how the other lieutenants would have handled it. They would probably panic with Veldora's casual order to switch duty. That's exactly why I told Veldora to ask for my permission first before doing something like this again. At the same time, there is only one more thing left for Diablo to attend to in person, that being the peace conference held in 5 days. He would be handling most of the details regarding the meeting, but he personally plans to continue the role as my butler. This is what Diablo has to say: I am Rimuru-sama's butler after all, so I must accompany you at all times. Ch.1 is very sour over the fact, proving this to be Diablo's victory. And about the peace conference. Should I tend as well? No, I alone will be sufficient. He rejected my proposal. It would probably be more reassuring to have your boss with you when dealing with such important business. But perhaps such worry is unnecessary for someone as capable as Diablo. Or rather, my presence would probably reduce the warmongering sentiments among the nobles. Although I'm somewhat confused about this application, things will be fine as long as Diablo is handling it. Upon thinking so, I can now safely take the great conquest of Farmus Kingdom off my mind. Hard scene break. Sometime later, things have gone just according to Diablo's prediction. The nobles have gathered for the Imperial Conference. Unlike the last meeting, the king and the ministers all look very serious as the tension overflows from their expression. The nobles also sense the difference in atmosphere. Their expression also gradually becomes more tense without them noticing. The king starts the discussion. Our troops marched on to destroy the Tempest Federation, yet they were decimated by the revived storm dragon Veldora. There are only 3 survivors, me, Razin and Rahiem. We've been defeated. It is an impactful line that incited commotion throughout the room. King Admales begins to recount the horrific fate of the Farmus army. The content sounded unbelievable to the crowds, yet what the king said immediately after the account diverted their disbelief to criticism of the king. It is hardly unexpected. Because the king announces that he has accepted the terms of the monsters to pay reparations for the war. The amount of reparation is 10,000 stellars. Impossible. A stellar exchanges to 100 gold coins. Are we really paying 1 million gold coins? How can we pay so much money to monsters? We can't even trust those things. We won't even be able to gather that sum even if we bankrupt the country. By the way, stellars are commonly used in bilateral trade between nations. Its existence is similar to a form of certificates for preservation. A normal nation would probably own less than 100 of them. No matter how strong the kingdom of Farmus is, they could only collect around 1,000 coins maximum, in addition to the more commonly used general coins, dwarven coins. Just as the nobles complained, it is an incredibly large amount for them to collect. If the victors were their trade partners, Farmus could probably replace currency with commodities, but as a new kingdom run by monsters, they didn't have this option with Tempest. Their economy would inevitably be affected. Diablo's intent was to make life difficult for them by demanding 10,000 coins, so it is no wonder that the nobles would complain about it. Besides, these nobles have not personally been on the battlefield themselves, so they lack a sense of urgency. They are not sharp enough to realize the crisis their nation is facing right now. That's why many nobles begin to step out in opposition and argue for the continuation of the war against their enemy. That's right. How dare they demand our compliance? It simply cannot happen. There is no way we could know if they would follow through with the deal and not attack our people. Then we can only fight them to the end. It's just an evil dragon awakened from slumber. I shall bet on my honor and march on them. The enemy here is Veldora. The Western Holy Church won't just sit on that. That beautiful Valkyrie Hinata would also take a move. Oh, commander of the Holy Knight Order, Hinata? That vixen may be cunning, but this is the perfect time to send her out. It is common knowledge that the Western Holy Church consider Veldora an enemy. Isn't there any chosen hero out there? Oh, there's Shining Masayuki from the Kingdom of Ingratia. That's it. The enemies are always beaten without even reacting. He's known as the strongest hero of this land. His title The Shining is not for show, we have to invite him to demonstrate his skill by defeating Veldora. The nobles are enjoying their chit-chat. But none of them realize their suggestions are all relying on others. That's the spirit. Let's go fend off those monsters. Some even begin to spill such ridiculous claims shamelessly. The royalists feel somewhat shameful seeing how the nobles are acting. They begin to recall how themselves were acting when the king first informed them of the matter. Some start to fluster while sighing while others even begin their self-reflection upon imagining how the king must have felt at the time. King Admales is also well aware of what is really on the minds of the nobles gathered here. Right now, all the nobles advocating for war are simply trying to protect their fortune. It is neither for the protection of the kingdom of Farmus nor for the life and properties of the citizens. They are simply putting out the words as if they are justified, while not harboring a real determination to fight the enemy. King Admales has suspected this is how things will turn out. These are all landed nobles who have yet to recognize the reality of the situation. These people have never experienced the taste of fear and don't have any intention of joining the front line. They just want to remain in safety while others fight their war. They probably won't take responsibility either when they are defeated. It may have worked in the past, because the Kingdom of Pharmus is a powerful nation that has oppressed surrounding nations in the past. But that is not viable anymore. Such an old trick of issuing threats to neighboring nations would no longer work. Besides, their opponent is the catastrophe-ranked monster who is capable of decimating an entire army on its own. Furious, the nobles start to loudly accuse the king for being responsible, and claim that the reparations should be paid by the royal family, and that the monster's demands must be rejected, and that they should unite the Pharmus military to take a last stand. The nobles' view, in a sense, is correct. But they are forgetting an important factor. That is, the military force within the Kingdom of Pharmus has been significantly reduced. Or perhaps, they are simply unwilling to accept this reality. With this reminded to them, some begin to quiet down with a tense look while some continue their unreasonable protest. King Admali's worries have come true, the nobles can't reach an agreement and the meeting has been plunged into chaos. At this moment, the head of the Optimates, the king's brother Edward, speaks up with much preparation. "Brother, no, your highness. Even with you stepping down, you can't evade responsibility. How could a dignified king just surrender like this? Heed this, Edward. Our enemy is Storm Dragon Veldora. My dignity and glory are like trash to that tyrant. I don't want to be tormented by that horror anymore. Or perhaps, you wish to fight for this glory. I won't stop you. But you would be sending the soldiers to die for a lost cause." "No, about that. But sire, if what you said is true, are you planning to run away on your own?" "You fool, where could I run to? That's why I want to step down and pay the reparations." Edward believed that this is his best move to hold the king responsible, but he was confronted by King Admali's rare display of verve and fell silent. Seeing this, King Admales lowers his volume and continues. "If I do not step down, we can only choose to be vassalized or continue the war. Is this really what we want? Our kingdom would be destroyed." But, you are asking us to surrender to the monsters without a fight." Still unconvinced, Edward mumbles so rather unwillingly. At this point, the meeting is quiet once more. Earl Herman carefully opens up. "Could you hear me out? This morning, I received a letter containing very important information. I would like to deliver the message to you all." Earl Herman finishes and begins to announce the open letter sent by the Kingdom of Bloomend. The content of the letter is as follows: Bloomend Kingdom officially supports Tempest Federation and would be sending military force to hold the Kingdom of Pharmus accountable. This is a real open letter in condemnation of the Kingdom of Pharmus. How dare a small nation like that be so arrogant? They must have been so arrogant because of our defeat. Surely they would have remained silent if we had achieved victory. Yet the anger of these nobles is quickly extinguished as they learn that Dworgen has made the same statement, the Foreign Trade Minister adds on Herman report. Now the nobles started to panic, their arrogant tones are also now toned down. Bloomend alone is enough, but if the armed nation of Dworgen moves out, things will get difficult. Will the Dwarven King Gazel still remain neutral? No, the problem is his influence and authority. Dworgen is also an important trade partner of ours, so nothing will end well with us angering King Gazel. The report of Earl Herman started the turn of atmosphere in the meeting room for the worse. But at that moment, someone dropped a bigger bomb. Message for His Majesty. Urgent news just arrived from the Freedom Association. A soldier looking rather pale intruded into the room without the care of the important meeting ongoing. But the guards don't seem to be stopping him. The reason being the highest urgency report on his hand. The nobles would want to complain, but the word highest have forced their words back to their mouth. This report is only issued for events with the threat level of Special Rank S. Whoever impedes its delivery would be given the penalty of treason as by the combined law issued by the Kingdom of Pharmus and Freedom Association. Speak. With King Admali's permission, the soldier raises the report with his hands nervously shaking and begins to announce its content. Monster Raimoru has proclaimed himself the ruler of Jura Great Forest. Report states that he publicly announced that he has become a demon lord. What in the world? This crisis may be our opportunity. Our country may still have a chance after all. That's right. Those demon lords won't sit this one out. That arrogant Raimoru would soon learn the horror of the real demon lords. If things go well, the demon lords may even take out the revived Veldora along the way too. The nobles follow up the report as the herald is halfway through, but what he is about to say would vanquish their hopes. Demon Lord Clayman was discontented and challenged Raimoru. Demon Lord Raimoru, has allegedly eliminated him instead. With the herald's words out, the shock experienced by everyone in the meeting room is unanimous. What? How can this be? What about Lion King Carrion? And Sky Queen Frey? What the hell are they up to? Are they seriously going to give away the rights to Jura Great Forest to a newcomer? It is only natural for them to be surprised learning their enemy has become a demon lord. One of the nobles followed up with a question about the responses of the other demon lords around Jura Great Forest. In response, the soldier finishes the last sentence. The Carrion and Frey you mentioned, they've given up their seat as demon lord to join the reign of demon lord Malim. The constituent of demon lords is thus altered as well. The now 8 demon lords in total are called the Octagram. This line completely silenced all of the optimates. They've probably learnt that their arch-nemesis Raimoru is also one of the Octagram. The royalists have already caught wind of the news prior to the meeting, but this doesn't mean they've accepted it willingly simply for knowing earlier. They again fell silent given how unbelievable it sounds no matter how many times they hear the news. This information was sent out by the demon lord's side alone. Since there is no point in doubting the authenticity, each demon lord possesses enormous strength to exempt them from the need to deceive the humans with such matters. The meeting room is clouded by silence before King Edmales decides to open up after hardened consideration. As you've heard, everyone, Vildora may be a great threat, but this monster called Raimord was equally a dangerous character. He is a monster beyond our imagination to have beaten Demon Lord Clayman so easily. Is there still a need to continue this meeting? My will to step down has been determined. It is simply too foolish to talk all high and mighty of how we are for the nation without even considering the capabilities of our enemy. I've been blinded by prophets, it was my mistake. Had we chosen another approach to interact with them, they might have been a good neighbor of ours. King Edmales implies that his abdication would likely lead to a new relationship between the two nations. The nobles realize there isn't a point opposing the proposal at this point as they carefully follow the king's words. Everyone finally decides to accept reality and follows through with King Edmales' proposal, the only viable way. I'm stepping down. In addition, I'm recommending Edward to inherit the throne. Brother. What did you say? Aren't you passing the throne to Prince Edgar? The king's unexpected words have caused a commotion in the room again. Everyone thinks that as soon as King Edmales steps down, the throne would be naturally passed on to the prince. That's why Edward has been trying hard in highlighting himself. His brother Edmales would have to step down. Facing such rare opportunity, Edward dreams to take the throne for his own. Even if Prince Edgar inherits the crown this time, there is still a chance as long as he affirms his authority. The prince is only 10 years old. But with his father still alive and well, Edward wouldn't be able to take control behind the scenes yet. If that is the case, he plans to spark discontent among the nobles, so they think in the direction of, Lord Edward is the proper candidate for the throne. But now, the throne is Edward's to take. There are still many challenges ahead of us. Edgar is still too young to conquer them properly. King Edmales says so rather bitterly. The ministers all hold different views, whereas some nods in agreement with this decision. My liege, I think this is a great idea. It is Marquis Mola. Hearing this, Edward laughs internally. Now this decision is likely hammered down since he has even got the approval from Marquis Mola, who is the head of the centrists. He is confident in his ability to overcome the challenges as soon as he has the throne. They would make excuses to delay the reparation payment while roping the neighboring countries into battle against the monster kingdom. Just as the nobles from his faction claimed, the human alliance with Chosen Hero and Holy Knights as backup would nonetheless be an effective deterrence. Besides, they may even be unnecessary. With the exchange of kingship, it would also mean the exchange of political power. The demands accepted by the previous government is not required to be fulfilled up by the new government. This would mean there is no need to pay for the ridiculously high reparation. If anyone is getting punished for it, he would push all the blames to the previous king, his own brother Edmales. Edward's thoughts are rather shallow. I will definitely make the nation more prosperous as soon as I become the king. Unaware of his orchestrated role in this grander play, Edward is overjoyed by the prospect of inheriting the throne. The meeting proceeded smoothly afterwards. Many questions were addressed with detailed solutions. They were able to outline a general plan and come to a unanimous agreement on engaging in peace conference with the monsters. The scene moves on to the location of the peace conference. The great and ancient kingdom of Pharmus agrees and signs the Treaty of Truce with Jura Tempest Federation. The two reach a common ground. In effect, The Kingdom of Pharmus is recognizing the legitimacy of the Tempest Federation as a country, even though they can't bypass international law nor having not established diplomatic tie. But with that being said, the Tempest Federation has yet to join the council formed by the Western nations, the Western State Council. So even if Pharmus were to commence another invasive attack, there will be no judicial intervention. It is only from a humanitarian point of view that Pharmus has recognized the status of Tempest Federation among different nations. But it has been proven that Tempest Federation possesses military strength. The ruler of that nation is the new demon lord, Rimuru. An ally of Storm Dragon Valdora, and a monster beyond their comprehension to have dominated the Jura Great Forest in less than 2 years' time. The facts are all listed right in front of them, so no nation would dare to start a war against Tempest Federation. Rather than profits, they think the losses alone would be too much. Moreover, acting too rashly may even lead to the destruction of their nations. From that day onward, Rimuru has become an existence that no one dares to obstruct. He has become a demon lord of this world, a catastrophe-rank threat. And Phase 1 concludes without any major issue. Everything is unfolding according to Diablo's plan.